Kiva Jayo Jayo Gaura Chande Arati Kashoba Kiva Jaga Manalo Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi
Hare Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Sanskar Acharya Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Smrita Rasata Shri Srimad Divine Krishna Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Bhakti Vaishnava ki Jai. Ramacharya Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shri Radha Krishna Govardhan ki Rajbhumi Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham ka Ganga Mai ki Jamuna Mai ki Bhakti Devi ki Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Glories to the Sangha devotees. Oh, glories to the Sangha devotees. Oh, glories to the Sangha devotees. Glories of glories to the glorious feet of Shri Shri Guru Gauranga. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. भक्तराज प्रहलाद महाराज की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की।
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, please. No worries. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. So, welcome to today evening's Bhagavad Gita class. We're in the second chapter, text 64. So let's go for the translation, for the Sanskrit verse, translation afterwards. Thank you so much. Ragadvesha vimukhtaistu Vishaya nindriyaishcharun Atma vashayar vidayatma prasadam adhigacchati ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyaischaran atma vasyair vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyaischaran atma vasyair vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati.
Ragadvesha vimuktaisthu
vishayan indriyaischaran atma vasyair vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayan indriyaischaran atma vasyair vidheyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Thank you very much. Raga, attachment. Dvesha, anti-attachment. Vimuktai, by one who has become free from. To, but. Vishayan, sense objects. Indriyai, by the senses. Charan, acting upon. Atma vashyai, under one's control. Vidheya atma, one who follows regulated freedom. Prasadam, the mercy of the Lord. Adhigacchati, attains. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Translation and purport. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Once again, the translation of the verse. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much for coming to this late hour here to the temple room and assemble. I mean, it seems kind of superfluous after such an ecstatic Gaur Arti to... we can see it's just the magic of Krishna consciousness is so much already in these transcendental sound vibrations that satisfies the heart enough, and we could go on just do kirtan, but somehow or other I have been put here to speak about Bhagavad Gita, and so I'd like to take this opportunity as a chance for purifying myself, and I hope that you can give me your blessings that I might be able to speak something that is of value and is really something that we can practice in our daily life. So here we're in the second chapter, in the midst of the so-called Samadhi section, in which Arjuna has asked for questions that are now answered by Krishna, and the answers are all concerned with the description of the qualities of one who is in transcendence, or in Sanskrit, what is it? Huh? Samadhi, no, but the person that is in Samadhi, or like, there's another term we used in Bhakti Shastra as well. It's the Sthita Pragya. Yeah, right. It's one word that has come quite often, right? So, in these verses from 254 to I think 270, till the end actually, till 272, are about these qualities of one that is really situated in his transcendence. Because Arjuna asked the question, what are the symptoms of such a person? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? And so this fourth question is now addressed in this verse 64. How does such a person walk? And we have to understand, first of all, that it's not meant like it's speaking figuratively, that this walking is actually meaning how does he engage his senses. So how does he walk the talk? Basically, we have heard so many like philosophical points. So how does he actually, in practicality, do that? And it's specifically concerned to how does he engage his senses. Just in the verse before, we have heard of the downfall, the so-called downfall verse, we called it also, how that a transcendentalist can fall down from his position by, first of all, like contemplating the sense objects, and then from there attachment and anger, delusion, all these things, one step after another, they come into place and drag one down into the material pool that Prabhupada calls the material pool, which is a very deep pool and is hard to come out again of that one. So we rather not go there too much, and that's why now Krishna really describes what is the other side of this pool, so to speak. When one comes out of this pool, what will we find there? In yesterday's class, Rasaraj Krishna Prabhu a little bit already elaborated on Yukta Vairagya, and that's a principle very much also addressed in this verse, 64, because before in 63 it was explained that there is basically two ways to deal with giving up fruits of one's action. So the first way is to kind of just don't engage in matter at all, like leave the matter aside, thinking it unfit to be somewhat engaged in any spiritual process, which then would be called Falgu Tyag, just giving up the fruits, which is basically the impersonalist approach. But then Yukta Vairagya means to connect the renunciation, right? Yukta means connected and Vairagya is renunciation. So the transcendentalist in Bhakti Yoga especially, he tries to use everything in Krishna service because he understands actually that's what this whole world is for. There is a purpose behind it, and this purpose is to engage everything in Krishna service and thereby spiritualize this whole world. And this is the very nice point that Prabhupada also mentions in this purport, but Rasaraj Krishna Prabhu also addressed it yesterday, that actually if we do that, if we do perform Yukta Vairagya, what we do is that we create a spiritual surrounding, right? Everything around us is spiritualized, and therefore it's really hard to fall back into material consciousness because everything is really spiritual already. So that is kind of our aim. That's where we want to go. So, Prabhupada speaks here about how the Krishna conscious person, or the Sthita Pragya, he does everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. He puts the satisfaction of the Lord over everything else. Therefore, he is transcendental to attachment and detachment, which is kind of hard to understand, but it's said here in the verse already, a person who is free from all attachment and aversion. So we should not be attached to the material world, that's easy to understand, but then also we should not be too much detached from it, which is kind of a little bit mind-boggling. But Prabhupada really means that we should not be detached in the sense that we can use the world, and we should use the world. That's what especially our lineage, our Sampradaya has been giving this world, this very important concept of Yukta Vairagya and how we can practically do that. Like we see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, how he engaged everything he could in Krishna service. He was not shying away from what typical sannyasis would not do, like drive cars or even have watches and all these kind of things, because he knew he can engage it in Krishna service. It went so far that he would say, you know, he would serve meat, right? You heard this before. He would serve meat because he knew that these people, they won't listen to us if we don't kind of communicate with them on their level. So that's how far he would go to kind of, you know, essentially just give them the chance to connect to Krishna. So this is kind of the mood we want to develop to really come to this stage where we can engage everything in Krishna service, which we should obviously not do like prematurely, and there's many excuses to do whatever we want. So it has to be, of course, also in accordance with Guru Sadhu Shastra. And it's about overcoming this raga dvesha, right? This desire or hatred, because that's the basic duality of this world. That's what keeps us stuck here, that we hate something or we love something, we desire something. That's the nature of the mind, right? And the nature of the mind keeps us stuck here. So, Burichan Prabhu in his Surrender Unto Me gives a nice definition of this great soul. He says, with a controlled mind and fixed intelligence, a man in transcendence remains disinterested in combining the senses with their objects. And here I was thinking of this example of Prabhupada. There's many occasions where Prabhupada really showed off or showed his detachment. For example, when he got some watches, right? There's these examples where some rich persons came, had darshan with him, and gifted him a watch. So he wore it, but then just after this man went out, he gave the watch to his disciple just like that. So he didn't want to displease the guest, obviously. He accepted his offering, but then also he was totally detached and could just give away whatever he wanted, like with no holding back. And then also, what is mentioned here by Prabhupada is that everything such a soul does, that's what Purichand Prabhu says, everything such a soul does is auspicious. And he experiences full satisfaction. And I was thinking of one example of Prabhupada here as well, when maybe you've heard this story. Bhaktivedanta Maharaj shared it. I've never heard it before, so it's an interesting one. When there was a time in ISKCON, I think it was 1974, around that time, where there was a lot of distress, a lot of problems. There was this whole Bombay thing going on, in Juhu, where they had the land, and it was like a struggle to get it, and all these things. And in Europe, certain important devotees had fallen down from their position, and so it was just chaos basically. And Prabhupada was in Mayapur with his disciples, surrounded by some big sannyasis, and Harikesh Prabhu, he shared this story how the sannyasis and the leaders, they were they didn't know what to do. They couldn't really figure out how they should carry on, and then another letter came with some very bad news from Europe. And they were so afraid to give it to Prabhupada, but then they eventually did it. But then they were wondering, how would Prabhupada react to that? How can he, now he has to be emotionally very much agitated. So then what happened is Prabhupada read the letter, and he paused for a bit, and then he said, okay, please go out. I need to be alone now. So the sannyasis, they went out, and they were a little bit, concerned what will happen now, And so they pierced through the, what do you call that? The keyhole, yeah. They pierced through it, and they wondered, what would Srila Prabhupada do? And they looked in, and what they saw was amazing. They saw Srila Prabhupada was lying on the floor, and he was just laughing. Just laughing, Just like he wouldn't have the one sorrow in the world, like a little child, just fully happy and satisfied, And they were like, what is going on? And you never heard that before, or never saw that before, right? But this just shows this basic point of how these great souls, for them everything is auspicious, first of all, and second of all, they're always satisfied, no matter what happens. So I think this verse here especially, all these verses, they show us this Citta Pragya, not necessarily for us to say we're not there yet, obviously, it's not a description of us, but that we can see practical examples of this, and Prabhupada really manifested all these qualities. So what we also can draw from it is that actually it's all about the consciousness in which we are in, right? Through which we perceive things. Because in essence, every person perceives the reality differently. Although there is an absolute reality that is there, it's not that everything is relative, right? That would be kind of a Mayavadi conclusion. And the closer we can see the world through Shastra, and our consciousness is really fixed in Shastra, we will actually be closer to the real reality. So it's all about consciousness and how pure we are in experiencing that consciousness, the real reality also. In this verse is also mentioned, what I find interesting is that Prabhupada says that, it's even though, he says here, although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. So this sensual plane is mentioned. Now what does it mean? I was just thinking, my understanding is that actually it's meant even as devotees we eat, for example, right? We have huge feasts. So it could seem from outside, for example, that this is quite sensual. We have loud roaring kirtans, which are very much emotional and intense, and which could be felt like this is just for the sensory pleasures, they would just want to hear nice sounds. So but actually, this sensual platform, again we come to this point of Yukta Vairagya. And again we can see that the pure devotees, they don't perceive it on this platform. And one example that came to my mind was Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, when once he was invited for a program to speak there, and there were I think around 150 persons there in India somewhere, and then they cooked for Maharaj, and they cooked for all the guests also. So they made 8 preparations, and so they prepared a nice plate for Maharaj, and they made 4 preparations only for him, very small quantity, and one cook alone was really meditating on that. And so they served a little bit of everything for Maharaj, and Maharaj only ate of these 4 preparations that were exclusively cooked for him. Nobody told him this is exclusively for him, but he had this plate with all his preparations, and out of them he just took these 4. And then they were a little bit, amazed about that, and asked him why did he only eat these. And he said, in this prasadam there is no love. In this I can taste the love is there, the bhakti is there. Here there is no love. So you can see this consciousness, even though we could say he was just having prasadam, he was just engaging in eating what we all do. But a pure devotee, he doesn't eat with this sense of is it tasty for the tongue, but rather he feels the love out of it. So he goes for, that's his main objective, and that's really something amazing. And we can ask ourselves, how much are we doing that? How much are we just trying to satisfy our tongues? And how much are we actually trying to, grasp that there is this element of bhakti which we are hankering for, right? And that we try to have in all our daily things we do. Yeah, so this just shows, again, the consciousness is the important point in the end. And now, how can we get to that consciousness? Obviously, it's quite far away for most of us, but basically it's about purifying ourselves, right? Because it's nothing new to gain. We don't have to get this consciousness, because in essence we already have it. We're a pure spiritual soul. We're part and parcel of God. We're Satchitananda. We're actually right now, we're perfect. But we just don't have access to that. So we need to kind of chisel out these layers away from who we truly are. Now, there's a very interesting verse in the Bhagavatam. Probably you've heard it before. It's in 1st Canto, 3rd chapter, text 44, where Prabhupada says in the purport, one should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. And no one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. So in this verse, or in this purport rather, Prabhupada breaks down, the consciousness levels. So the highest level which we should aim for is to hear with rapt attention, because then we get the purification. But obviously most of the time we're not really able to do that, right? That would be enough. Just hear Bhagavatam with rapt attention. You will see Krishna in every page as a person. Not just as some visualization, but actual presence of Krishna in Bhagavatam. It's amazing, right? So as far as we are concerned, most of us, we cannot do that. So how to get there? We need to be pure in mind, so that's already quite difficult. And to be pure in mind, one must be pure in action, which is also not easy. But then to be pure in action, one must be pure in eating, means actually to be pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. And so here we come to these 4 regulative principles as well, right? Of freedom. Here Prabhupada is actually this verse that is quoted always, because it's the only time, I looked it up, where Prabhupada really translates it like this, that a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So yeah, that's what we're striving for, to really get pure habits in all these areas. And that's what our whole practices are about also, right? We want to get there. We eat only Krishna Prasad. We sleep only enough that we can be attentive and effective in our practice. And we also make fearing and mating as minimized as possible. Now, the important thing is that these regulative freedoms are not only moral rules. One could say that, right? It's just moral rules, but actually, Ravindra Sarup Prabhu, he mentions this point, is actually the basic of knowledge. If you're not following these regulations in all these like sectors, you will not be able to really attain the true knowledge. So that's what we should also have in mind, and therefore keep at like the consciousness of the importance of these things intact always, and try to really work on that. To become pure in action means pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. And also, just this morning, Bhaktivasudev Maharaj mentioned this point, right, of that we should, if we have problems with our mind, which we all have, we should really come back to the basics and see how much are we actually following the regulative principles. Are we just thinking, yeah, I'm a vegetarian, that's enough? Or are we actually connecting it to Krishna as well, using it to get knowledge about Krishna? Because if these are really deep things, actually, these 4 regulative principles, because they're very much connected to Krishna, right? We want to be Krishnadarians, not only vegetarians. We eat what Krishna wants us to eat, not just what is like socially acceptable or, ahimsa, so-called. That's also there, of course, but it's not because it's ahimsa that we do it, but because Krishna says it, that we do it. So in this way, we can go into each of these 4 regs and go deeper and try to understand the connection to Krishna, really. Why does Krishna say that? And then practice them more, and therefore become purer in our eating, mating, sleeping, defending, and thereby getting purer in action, getting purer in mind, and finally we will be able to pay rapt attention to the Bhagavatam, which will purify our existence to that level that we can see Krishna in the pages of Bhagavatam. So let's try that to get there one day. And then actually, there's another point. Then only we can become truly free. Because Prabhupada calls it the regulative principles of freedom. And he also says in another purport in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.6.37 that without freedom there is no execution of devotional service. So it's very much linked, of course. And what is actually freedom? We would say the opposite of freedom is dependence. But then in Krishna consciousness, through surrender, we get dependent and then become truly free. And how much free we can become is shown in the example of Narada Muni, right? He can go everywhere, all the time. He's traveling, and it's ultimate freedom, and that's what our position is and what we can strive for. So yeah, I want to close here. Sorry, it was a lot of it was kind of different points because this verse is very rich. But I think baseline is focus more also on how much important these 4 regulative principles are and how we can connect them to Krishna and thereby become more pure in our consciousness, in our mind. Thank you very much. Maybe we can have a question if there is one. Poke Prabhu.
Yeah, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, it's okay. We don't need to.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much for your class.
Hare Krishna.
Very, very concise, but gives a point. Very, very nicely elaborated with examples. I just have a question in regards to this term Yukta Vairagya. And the examples that you gave of like Bhaktivedanta Saraswati and you obviously know Srila Prabhupada. If you go deeper into the Shastras, personalities like Buddha who really changed the concept of spiritual philosophy so that they can be able to get people to a certain point. We see that all these people who practice this kind of Yukta Vairagya are at an advanced stage. So my question is Yukta Vairagya something that we should be meditating on as neophytes? Or is it something that we can aspire for once we reach a particular stage where we're actually protected? Because it seems that you need to have this protection based on regulations, and then once you're at a particular stage where you can perceive spiritual reality more concisely, then you can start to utilize other things. But before we reach there, we should still protect ourselves.
Okay, I just quickly repeat the question. So the gist of it is, should we as neophytes try to aim for Yukta Vairagya, or should we rather wait until we have like a more clear picture of spirituality and are more advanced in our practice, right? Okay, so yeah, definitely. And yeah, I also think that, especially, I guess it's also not, like a phenomena of modern times, that it's very much common, this term of Yukta Vairagya, and it's very loosely used. So many devotees say, yeah, it's Yukta Vairagya, we should, for preaching. I just do it for preaching. But then again, I think it must really, it must be based on Guru Sadhu Shastra. It must be based on our authorities. We cannot just do everything and anything. And also, maybe just to connect it to what Bhakti Vasudev Maharaj said this morning, when he was speaking about, like, he's doing that also in a huge way, right? He's writing all these papers, he's reaching out to the scientists and like important people. And so he uses this rather mundane knowledge as well, like about management, decision sciences, to get across bhakti also and to implement bhakti. So what he said actually was, when asked like, how can we do it? He said, basically the very important point is that you need to have a vast knowledge of Shastra, right? So I think this stuck with me. This is also for us to, these personalities, they have to be able to do that. They had like quite some time where they really focused and absorbed themselves in Shastra. So only if you had this absorption, you can really do that on a solid level without diluting the philosophy and thereby cheating yourself and others. So definitely I would see it as you say, we must be very careful, but also not just reject it because of that, right? Because at some point we must be there, we must come to this stage. Prabhupada has expected from us to be able to become Madhyama Adhikaris at least, to preach to others effectively and to know Shastra and all this, and for that we need to have Yukta Vairagya in some sense. Yeah, what would you say?
No, definitely, you're right. I guess it can be Yukta Vairagya under the constraints of the regulations that we have. So for example, when we hear, Bhaktisiddhanta was telling his disciples to wear leather shoes to go out and distribute books, or he was going to programs and serving people meat. We, at our level and stage, these are not things that we can actually propagate, right, because we're still not yet being able to strongly perceive spiritual reality. But there's a stage where that can be permissible if we have the eyes to see that for the bigger picture that's essential. But if we look at it from a mundane vision, then that's when we can, like I remember one time, and this is before I became a devotee, I went to a store and I bought a leather bag. And then when I became a devotee, I realized that this leather bag is not really something I should be have. But then I was telling the devotees, Yukta Vairagya. But that I'm using it to carry my Bhagavad Gita, I'm using it to carry Shastra. So it's actually really useful and it's durable, and funny enough I still have it, although I don't use it anymore. But I understand that I was using that as an excuse for me to practice the things that are wrong.
Right.
So we should only kind of be secure in that space.
And I think that's where it starts, when you're actually able, when you go deeper and you see actually, was it really Yukta Vairagya or not? You can perceive how you kind of cheated yourself, how your mind cheated you, and then you become more aware, and you become more and more aware to the degree that you can really I missed the word. Decide on a good basis of knowledge what is actually appropriate or what not, what is not.
I just want to make a comment as well. You quoted Bhaktivedanta Manor. And the statement that he made was very, very important, I think, about going back to the basics of sadhana, the basics of following your basic regulations as a means to be right and agree. I was giving this example when we were having the discussion started within the time in class. And in the early days, if you had a problem and you went to a senior, and you're crying out and you're just saying, well, the senior will look at you first and ask you, what's your sadhana? Because, and then if your sadhana is poor, they tell you, okay, go do your sadhana, improve your sadhana, then come back. And it should seem a little bit harsh from the beginning, but actually, strong sadhana becomes the blueprint for us to be able to see our problems much clearly.
Right.
Like that. And then from there, we can kind of like protect ourselves. I thought that was powerful. What teaches that based on
Yeah. Yeah, nice point. I just quickly repeat for the audience, because it's very valuable, of course, that Ian Prabhu says that back in the days when a devotee had a problem, they would, and he came to an authority and spoke about it, and the authorities would first ask, how is your sadhana? And so if the sadhana was not so good, then he would first be asked to improve that. So it can sound harsh, but actually this is the blueprint through which we can see much more clearly what are the problems and how we can work with them. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Pokiji.
Thank you for your class, bro, and thank you for your points as well. I find it amazing that a lot of the stories which you pull to make your point make it much easier to understand. So in the last line of the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, this consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. So Prabhupada here making the point that yes, one way is to engage in transcendental service of the Lord, but then also the Lord's causeless mercy is also there which can manifest that consciousness. Or is it through the transcendental service which we get consciousness, which we get the causeless mercy? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. It's a question that I also ask myself, also connected to it with the, the sensual. Here it says, in spite of his being attached to a sensual platform, where before it was said, actually, he has no attachment to sensual activities. Right, and then in the purport also, no attachment to sensual activities. So it seems kind of, Ian Prabhu?
Well, he says which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. So even if he's attached to the sensual platform, this consciousness where he can act under the direction of Krishna can still be achieved by Krishna's causeless mercy. That's
Right. I would also go in this direction that actually, so it's just different stages of devotees, right? So before we were speaking of the Stita Pragya, and here now this is a devotee that is not yet the Stita Pragya, but he can still get the mercy of the Lord, right? That's what you would say.
If the first time when he says has no attachment to sensual activities, that's a Stita Pragya who's already transsensory. He's using his senses, but his senses are not attached.
Yeah, right? Although the person in full Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a Stita Pragya. He's like transsensory in his activities. But here Prabhupada is saying that consciousness can be achieved by the mercy of the Lord. Even though at the current moment, because it can be achieved, even though at the current moment it's still on the sensual plane.
Right.
So by a gradual engagement in devotional service, we can become Stita Pragya and be able to achieve this consciousness fully.
Right. Yeah, nice. Yeah, this consciousness, right, is making this distinction, this consciousness and that consciousness of sensual attachment. But very nice. I actually asked myself this question, and now you brought it up, and in this discussion was really lucid to me also.
On Yukta Viraga, I feel like even in my own service in the past few years, when I've been serving, it's just been like the bridge preaching is similar as well. Like we go so far into the bridge that we lose sight of where it's actually started.
Right.
Just to do anything into it.
Yeah.
We should be so conscious of
The goal of the bridge is to cross that.
Yeah.
Keep adding water to the milk, but at some point it stops becoming milk, and it's just
Right. Yeah, I was listening only half the lecture, unfortunately, of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj on this verse, because obviously he had something to say about this. And he was also making this point, especially also, about speaking about these wrecks. When do we introduce them? Are they even introduced nowadays, or is it just, nobody mentions them anymore so much? So yeah, and Yukta Vairagya is similar, right? It's like we should be very careful. But it's so nice to see, that an organization or a club like Pandavasena is really aware of that as well. That the leaders are in awareness, because that's where it starts. If the leaders are aware and trying their best, then Krishna will surely help also. That's what I think. Thank you so much, Prabhus. Really appreciate your presence, and yeah, wouldn't have been necessary, but thank you very much. And Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Instead of turning it off, don't just go to this one.